What is there so difficult about aging? Well, if someone would tell me he found a wonderful anti-aging cure, I would immediately ask him, what can this cure do against inflammation? Is there any scientific evidence that it is the champion of anti-inflammation? Because it is all about inflammation. Whether it is your heart, your brains, your joints, or even the C virus, the underlying cause is inflammation. Let's take pneumonia, for example. It is a serious inflammation of your lungs which will be treated with antibiotics. If the antibiotics can't help anymore, then this was it. And what is so difficult about aging? First, it is the looks. But this is by far not the worst sign of aging. Second, it is your brains. When you forget things all the time. With Alzheimer's rapidly becoming the number 3 cause of death in Western society, this is a real concern. And third, here comes the worst. Constant pain. There's nothing worse than pain. It makes you life miserable each and every day. This goes hand in hand with the so-called age-related chronic diseases. Who doesn't have them? Well, that brings me right back to my first question. Who is the champion against inflammation? And this is without any doubt high doses of melatonin. There are 2,598 published studies in PubMed about the anti-inflammatory effects of melatonin. These are all scientific papers, nothing we have just invented. Melatonin takes away your inflammation wherever it is. And don't be surprised when after a while your pains are gone. Where is no inflammation, there is no pain. Again, we cannot stop the aging process, but we can stop inflammation and pain, and we can keep our minds fresh. How about being 85 years old and never had any age-related disease, having nothing? Well, you might know Professor Russel Reiter, a real champion of high doses of melatonin. For the last 40 years, he has been tirelessly engaged in the science of melatonin. He has published books and countless research papers on the subject. For over 28 years, he has been taking high doses of melatonin himself on a daily basis, and he says he is 85 years old and he has nothing. He never had an age-related disease. And listen carefully as he continues, and all his colleagues who took as well high doses of melatonin, exactly the same, they have nothing too. Isn't that too good to be true? Yes, it is not a randomized controlled study, as he admits. Do we really need a randomized controlled study? Or can we simply learn from that and imitate it? Learning is the permanent change in behavior that results from observation or from training, as a beautiful definition suggests. Yes, we learn also by observation, as each kid would do naturally. We want to finish this video with a quote from Dr. Klinghardt. When you first use high doses of melatonin as patches, most people do not feel any changes, also regarding their sleep. It hardly affects it in the beginning, but what it does is phenomenal. If you know a little about biochemistry, then you know the worst thing that can happen in inflammation is the creation of peroxynitrates. This ultimately leads to the destruction of your cells and to cell death. And high doses of melatonin is the antidote for this. It stops this process due to its high anti-inflammatory actions. Thanks for watching.
Glutathione is the main antioxidant in the brain, if you want to protect the brain. And then all of us injected the hell out of people, and we saw very little progress in our Alzheimer's patients and the sick patients. And then the literature started emerging a far more important detox agent and anti-inflammatory for the intracellular component of our cells in the body was melatonin. And that melatonin on its own has strong antiviral effects. Antimicrobials are used for sepsis. One of the most deadly human conditions is sepsis, and it beautifully stops that. With COVID-19, I advised several physicians that run emergency departments in large hospitals, in Saudi Arabia and Australia and other places. And people that followed my advice, they had virtually a 0 death rate by including melatonin against the so-called cytokine storm that nobody really knows if that really exists or not, but that dive that COVID patients took, at least initially when the virus was more aggressive. And so melatonin has a huge plethora of effects. But when you Google, when you put in melatonin and mercury, you find out that it basically undoes the lethal effects of mercury instantly. When you Google aluminum and melatonin, same thing. Glyphosate and aluminum, glyphosate and melatonin. So melatonin has really like a huge range of spectra of things that it does.